Well, we just woke up to our first little bit of snow accumulated on the ground here. It's not a whole lot, but it is a clear sign that winter is right on our doorstep. And that means it's time for us to kick it into high gear and get this new motor in so that we can get to warmer weather. Well, just this afternoon, we finally got the troopy moved inside the shop, and they're kind enough to still let me sleep in it overnight, which is absolutely incredible. So after a lot of pushing and finagling to get it sort of wedged in between their two main bays here, because it's a busy shop and this project's gonna take a bit of time, we did a little bit of prep work. So a little bit of front end tear down just to make some space. The ARB bumper and the winch are off over there. We've got a table to collect parts here. We've got my radiator reservoir off. We got the front grill off and the front cross member. Pulled out the air filter too, and disconnected all the battery and things like that. Now tomorrow will really be more of the same tear down work, getting prepped to pull this old motor and get the new one ready to go in. Things like the power steering pump, the alternator, the AC compressor, thermostat, water pump, carburetor and manifolds, those all need to come off, get cleaned up and prepped to install onto the new motor. But once we've got those out of here, we're pretty much at a point where we can pull this block and get ready for the new one to go in. Well, just as things started to feel like they were going really smooth and we would be out of here any day now, we've run into an issue. And of course it came at the end of the day. We spent the whole day stripping parts off the old block, getting them cleaned up and getting them installed onto the new block. And of course the last piece we did is the problem child. We got to my exhaust and intake manifolds. Here, let me show you. So getting these all cleaned and prepped and, getting the gasket ready. And as I go to put it on the head, you can see that there's an issue here. The intake ports on this head have this curved top piece, but the intake ports on my manifold are rectangular. So what that means is that this motor was sold to me as a 3F that would accommodate my carbureted manifolds. But what they actually sent was a North American market 3FE, at least the head. Everything below the head is the same between the 3F and the 3FE, but this head is for a fuel-injected intake manifold, and it also has ports for some of the smog EGR stuff. So we really don't have a lot of options at our disposal here. There's no way to get this manifold to fit on this head. So likely what it's gonna mean is pulling the head off of my old block, getting this cleaned up, and getting it installed onto the new block. Now, this certainly isn't a huge deal. The only thing that scares me about this plan is obviously my motor got hot. It got hot, there was some damage. I don't think that any of that damage has affected the head. I don't think it got hot enough to warp the head, anything like that. But it's something we're going to have to check out very closely. And worst case scenario here, if we pull the head, run a straight edge across it, and it looks like it's warped at all, then we're going to be waiting for a while so that we can send it off to a machine shop. The closest one is probably in Fairbanks, and get that resurfaced before we move forward with this build. So all in all, not a showstopper, but certainly something that's going to take a little extra time here. You know, I've been saying all along that I was trying to be out of here before the snow really fell. But I gotta be honest with y'all, it's actually really special to be up here for the first big snow. To see this town that I've been living in for the last month just completely transformed, being blanketed in this cover of white snow. There's something really cool about it, and it's Bandit's first time really getting to play in the snow like this, and he's absolutely loving it. So I'm glad I'm right where I'm at. Well, after being stalled for a couple of days with that head issue on the new block, we're finally making progress again. It may not be ideal, but what we ended up doing was completely disassembling my old head, pulled the valves, the springs, the guide rods, everything, and really did a thorough inspection and a thorough cleaning of the parts. The valves look good. They're not too pitted. They weren't too gunked up or anything. The head itself was straight, no signs of warping. And overall, between myself and the experienced mechanic I've been working with, feel pretty good that things are gonna be all right if we just reassemble the thing and put it on the block. So that's what we ended up doing. We did replace the valve seals, but everything else is just straight out of my old head. Well, I was really hoping this video would culminate with us getting the engine back into the troopy, firing her up, and getting the heck out of Dodge. We're making great progress, we're just not quite there yet. Most notably though, the engine is finally off the engine stand and onto the hoist so that we could start rebuilding the back end. We got the flywheel back on, the bell housing back on, but as this project has sort of been going, it was Friday around 4 p.m. when we realized we need a new pilot bearing to finish the assembly. So it's not a very hard to find part, it's just not one that we have here in town. Luckily we found one over in Fairbanks, and my hope is that it'll be here first thing Monday morning, because at that point we will really be cooking with gas, and it won't be much longer at all to get the engine into the engine bay, start figuring out the rat's nest of vacuum hoses and cables that need to be reconnected, and then turning it over for the very first time. This is sort of the reality of doing a project like this. I'm doing it for the very first time and learning as I go. So as we run into problems, we're adapting, we're improvising, and we're overcoming to keep making progress.
I certainly wouldn't be this far along if it weren't for the tremendous support from the experienced mechanics here at the shop and from the support of all of you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all checking in on the progress and sending your well wishes my way. It's been absolutely phenomenal and has really kept me going over the last 5 weeks. So I hope to bring better news in the next one, but until then, if you like what I'm doing, it's a huge help to subscribe and stick around so you don't miss anything. But until next time, get out and explore somewhere.